The Quiet Tenant. At first I diagnosed it as equipment failure, my own. After Iraq, after 12 years on contract, the mind is a tool that can malfunction. Its calibrations drift. I logged the entity in the corner of my apartment between the uninhabited bookshelf and the window facing the fire escape as a persistent tactical hallucination, a consequence of professional wear and tear. Her name was Alice. I had neutralized the target and sanitized the area, but apparently, not all traces were erased. She would manifest upon reaching a specific threshold of darkness, not abruptly. First, the air in the corner would thicken, light would bend around an invisible mass, and only then would the details resolve. Dark hair, a white polka dot dress, now with rust-colored inclusions, an empty gaze fixed on a point behind my shoulder. The manual did not prescribe procedures for this kind of systemic error. A pistol is useless against mirages generated by one's own firmware. For the first 47 nights I maintained observation, stood guard, slept in fits in the armchair, weapon on my lap. The adrenaline spike at her appearance gave way after about 2 weeks to a constant background strain. The anxiety level stabilized at a high mark. The organism had adapted to the toxin. On the 48th night, I fell asleep in the chair. That was the first stage of capitulation. Stage 2 began with a strategy of disregard. I would return from an assignment, a neutralization in Brooklyn, a clean job, conduct standard post-op sanitation, order food, turn on documentary films about war. She would stand. I would watch the screen. We occupied the same territory without engagement. After roughly 3 months, I noted I no longer flinched when my peripheral vision registered her appearance. The nervous system had accepted the new status quo. The threat had been reclassified as an environmental feature. Stage 3, rationalization and the initiation of one-sided contact. I began to speak, not to her, in her direction, statements of fact. The kitchen light bulb burned out. It is raining. The client was jumpy today. Her silence was absolute resonant. But a vacuum has a property it demands to be filled. My monologues grew longer. I talked about the properties of C4 explosive, about how the desert smells after a rare downpour, about the taste of army coffee. Her presence was perfect neutral ground. No judgment, no questions, no answers. I, who had trained for years in silence, discovered that my thoughts, spoken aloud in the empty apartment, did not return as an echo, but seemed to be absorbed by that dark patch in the corner. It created a false sense of decompression. Changes to my internal protocols accumulated gradually, like sand in a bolt mechanism. I began refusing contracts that required leaving the city. My efficiency dropped. I lingered in the apartment during the day in full light when she was not there. But I waited for nightfall, waited for the static figure to appear. It became a new, strange item in the daily routine. After 8 months and 4 days, I kept count. An incident occurred. I returned. There was a spot on my shirt cuff, tiny, almost invisible, not mine. I was irritated, sloppiness. I said toward the corner, already hazy with evening gloom, "Hell, clumsy, getting old." And I thought, no, I was certain. The corner of her lip, blue like an old bruise, twitched a millimeter. Not into a smile, into a grimace that could be interpreted as understanding, solidarity. It was the first error in target recognition. My mind began assigning her emotions that were not and could not be there. I called it a compensatory mechanism. The psyche, being a social instrument, was trying to socialize the threat, integrate it into its map of the terrain, make it predictable. I began setting up house for the hallucination. This was stage 4. The psychic collapse was taking an orderly form. I bought flowers, put them in a tall vase and placed it on the shelf in her corner. white lilies. After a few days, they began to smell of decay, but I saw deep symbolism in that. I would leave a cup of cooled coffee on the windowsill in the morning in the line of her supposed gaze. I played classical music, which I could not stand, because I assumed she, an artist, might have liked it. I reconstructed her personality from shreds of an old dossier and my own projections. I created the perfect woman, silent, ever-present, ever-forgiving. I fell in love with the concept, with the void I had filled myself. Sleep became fragmented. Reality lost its tactile quality. Food was tasteless. Sounds were muffled. The only point of focus, the only stimulus to which my system gave a vivid response, was the appearance of her silhouette at dusk, a release of something akin to anticipation. I caught myself hurrying the day along so night would come, so my personal screening of a single, static frame could begin. 1 year and 2 months. Externally, I was functional, executed simple local contracts, paid the rent. But inside, everything had corroded. Moral codes already damaged had crumbled to dust. I had not just killed Alice, I had appropriated her, made her my talisman, my confessor, a museum for the one mistake that had become the axis of my world. I kissed the air a centimeter from her icy shimmer, spoke of love to a ghost, to a stain on the carpet I could never quite remove. And yesterday, the system experienced a terminal failure. I stood before her, winter. The window was covered in frost. She seemed closer than ever, the details of the dress rendered with painful clarity. I spoke the words I had been hunting for weeks, a declaration, a confession and a proposal in one. Alice, I love you, only you, we can be together, truly. My mind, like a soldier repeating a mantra by rote, waited for a response, waited for a change in the rules of engagement, waited for the static object to finally exhibit interactivity. And it did. Her head turned, mechanically, with a barely perceptible sensation of creaking that was, of course, not real. Her eyes, two dark, dead optical sights, acquired me as their target, and there was nothing in them. No love, no hate, only an absolute freezing emptiness like a cleared field. And in that emptiness I saw my reflection, a haggard, sick, deranged creature talking to an empty corner. And then she smiled. It was not a human smile. It was the grimace of war itself, having concluded a long, grinding operation, an operation of eradication. Her lips stretched, revealing uniform darkness behind them. It was a gesture of triumph, not over a man, but over a target that had liquidated itself. The order did not come from within. It was drilled in by that gaze, that smile. A pure, clear, irrefutable directive. Neutralize the threat. Neutralize yourself. And I understood, all that time, all those months of quiet decay. She was not forgiving, she was not waiting. She was waging a war of attrition, not against morality that was already gone. She was degrading the very link between my consciousness and reality. She waited until I had disabled all my own safeties and violated all my own protocols. The love was not the culmination. The love was the terminal symptom, the final delirium of a sentry who had forgotten the password. I walked to the nightstand, took the Colt. Its weight in my hand was the only real thing, steel, mechanics, a clear sequence of actions. I did not look at her one last time. I looked into the barrel. There was perfect, symmetrical darkness there, order. The shot roared in the silence I had built for the two of us. The fall was heavy. And before consciousness shut down for good, I managed to receive one final signal. Her image shimmered, lost coherence, disintegrated like ash. And on her face, for the final millisecond, that same smile was still fixed. Not sad, satisfied. Mission accomplished. Target eliminated. Assignment closed. and then a dash, emptiness, and no one in the corner.